Brian, I want to ask you, too, about this breaking news we're just getting out of this court in Florida where the Mar-a-Lago Search Affidavit was being decided on. It's a little nuanced, but help us understand the decisions that we're getting now.
Yeah, so essentially the judge wants to see proposed redactions from DOJ that could come out and see this underlying warrant. I think DOJ's redactions would be so heavy that DOJ at least has said that they would render it essentially useless, that they wouldn't be able, there wouldn't be any more information or context that you could get because they would want to redact so much of this because they don't want to give Donald Trump essentially a roadmap to this investigation and say it is in the very early stages. What the judge has decided, Aaron, is that they don't think that DOJ should be making those decisions about whether or not that's actually useful, whether or not this information should be released. So he wants to see what those proposed redactions would be, and we might end up with a heavily redacted version of this that would give us some information, but probably not a ton of information about where this investigation is headed in the future, Aaron.
So just to make sure I'm clear, Ryan, we're not going to see a document of any sort today. The government has a chance to go back and this has not been unsealed. It's not being sealed necessarily either. And it's going to take some time before a real final ruling is made on that, right?
Precisely. Yeah, this won't be an instant turnaround, but we should be hearing back this in the coming days to see where those proposed redactions land and whether or not there's any information that could be turned over, even if it's not extraordinary, earth-shattering information. So that that I guess a lot of the news organizations want to come out of this, Aaron.
Yeah. All right. Ryan Riley for us in D.C. Ryan, thank you. I want to bring in our NBC News legal analyst, Danny Cevallos, now. Danny, I want to say this is unexpected, right? I think the wisdom that had been sort of talked about through the last couple of weeks here was that this was going to be a document that remained sealed. What are your thoughts about what we're hearing from the court today?
Special times call for special measures. I still say that in 99 out of 100 of these cases, it's a no-brainer. There is no unsealing of the affidavit of probable cause. But in a case like this, with such public interest and involving the most unique person upon whom a search warrant has ever been served, that the rules tend to change a little bit. Yet, this is a judge, a magistrate judge, saying not necessarily that it's going to be unsealed, but that some of it might be, not exactly sure what that's going to mean, but it has to be somewhat of a surprise to DOJ that the judge is going in this direction.
And so what would be the harm done here then, Danny, if in fact there were useful parts of this affidavit that would be unsealed? For the DOJ, what would they see as the potential harm there for them? And then on the other side of this, what would be the value to the media organizations and to the Trump team?
Well, the value to the media organizations is the same value to the public at large. We want to see it. There's intense public interest. But the value to the Trumps is a little different. It's more like, can we find out what the government has on us, and can we find out who's been snitching on us? I mean, that's how they might put it. That's, of course, not how the government would put it. And the government's concern, which I think is a legitimate one, is if you disclose the search warrant affidavit, I keep calling it the search warrant affidavit, it's the affidavit of probable cause. That is written in a narrative form. And yes, it might not identify specific witnesses or cooperators by name, but with enough of a narrative, you can piece together who's who and who's doing the disclosing. So not only does it compromise the investigation, it could potentially compromise the source of the information who gave it to agents with the idea that, look, I'm going to give this to you, but I don't plan on testifying. I don't want it put out there. And that could be a problem, too, for law enforcement. I mean, I am really surprised that there is even a discussion in court about this. But, you know, look, it might also be that the judge is just looking at every possibility, every angle, because this is arguably one of the more important search warrants ever served in search warrant history, unlike the hundreds, maybe thousands that are requested, issued, and served every day across this country that we never hear about. Those are the kinds that you would never get the affidavit of probable cause unless and until the government wants to turn that document over. This is an unusual situation, and therefore we're seeing unusual rules emerge.
I want to ask you about redactions here, right? I mean, as I understand the notes that we're getting out of court, the judge is telling the government you can go through this affidavit and make the redactions that you think should be there. The judge would then look at it himself and decide whether he agrees with the redactions or would want to do something different. What level of redaction would you anticipate from the DOJ for a document like this, considering that there's still an investigation that's going on?
I have a vision of the artist Rothko that comes to mind, and it's going to be just giant blocks, not of blues or reds. It'll be all black. That's what I expect. I mean, large blocks of redacted documents, the kind that ruin the toner in your printer when you try to print them out. This is going to be something that the government is going to heavily redact. Anything that remotely relates to a confidential source or to somebody who may also be a target subject, something like that is going to be redacted. That's my expectation. And I have to believe the government lawyers are going back to their offices saying, I can't believe that this is even something we have to do now. I would expect that they're very surprised that this is even in play. But look, the government's very good at redacting. They do it fairly often. We've seen that during the Mueller investigation, during some of the other investigations over the last few years. They have no problem redacting entire pages and covering them in black. And so that is what I would expect they would do here liberally.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.